The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone. This is a recorded version of the webinar. We had some difficulties in that it seemed my screen had frozen and it wasn't being broadcast, so I do apologise for that. Anyone who didn't see the webinar previously, my name's Mark, and for those who don't know me, I'm the Integration Manager at AIT, and I've been working with Salto for almost 6 years now. Today's webinar is aimed at showing the new space software from Salto and to highlight some of the key features that are available in it. Whether you're new to Salto or you have an existing system utilising the old RW ProAccess software, I hope you'll find the next half an hour useful. So first and foremost, I hope you can hear me, and I hope also this time you can see my screen. Due to the number of people in this webinar, we'll be running the session in listen-only mode. And if you have any questions, please note them down. As I say, this is a recording, so if you just want to email them in to us after you've watched the presentation, then we'll answer them then. Any questions are treated anonymously. Alternatively, we can take individual in-depth discussions that may be needed offline. So I can skip through these bits. Okay, so today's webinar, there's quite a lot that I'll be covering, but to make things as simple as possible, I'll be breaking it down to the following areas. We'll be looking at the new software interface. It's significantly different, and there's a few things you'll need to know about how it works. Along with the revised software, there's some new hardware, which I'll quickly be running through and showing how it differs to the old equipment. There's also a quick look at the mobile platform. NFC and BLE are now options with the equipment, so that mobile phones can be utilised for unlocking doors. The licensing has changed significantly in the space platform, so I'll be looking at some of the options available and the various software editions. And then finally, I'll be running a quick demonstration of the software interface so you can get a feel for how it works and also draw some similarities to previous software versions for those who are familiar with Salto already. So the biggest news about Space is the move from a client application to web-based management. This has the advantage of making the solution much more portable and accessible and simplifying deployment. From an installation perspective, there is now only one installer to run, and all the necessary configuration steps are carried out during installation. Furthermore, with the latest release of the Space software, all the management of service components, such as live monitoring, roll call, etc., is also managed through the browser. At the moment, users will require Silverlight and Internet Explorer to be available for the management interface. Salto are working hard to remove these dependencies and make the system cross-browser compatible and rely purely on HTML5 for the interface. We're yet to find out whether this will make the system Mac compatible, but certainly for day-to-day management that should be fine. However, in order to support USB peripherals, users are required to download and install a small utility to handle the communications. Ethernet encoders should work without issue, so if you've got thin clients, then an Ethernet encoder for managing the cards is a great solution for that. So for those of you who are already familiar with the older software, you should recognise this screen. It's the welcoming grey tones of RW ProAccess. And actually, apart from looking a little dated now, the software works absolutely fine. It was pretty robust, quick to navigate, and it did everything that you needed to do when you're managing the system. However, times have changed, and the first thing you will see after logging into Space is this screen. So the banner at the top gives you your currently logged in user, any system notifications, there's a log out button and some information and help screens. We've also got access to all the menu options, so we've got our various components of the system, and there's a grid of tiles for quick access to common settings and tasks. You'll also notice, for those who are familiar with Salto already, there's been some changes to the terminologies. So doors are now referred to as access points, users are referred to as card holders, and some of the other options have been grouped together to declutter the screen. The old user list has also had a refresh to look much less cluttered, and those familiar with the quirks of the old search facility in Salto will be pleased to hear that Space has much improved filtering capabilities, which I'll be demonstrating towards the end of the presentation. So I'll very quickly go through the menu items. Most of these are very similar to previous software versions, but some of them have got different names now. So in the access points menu, we can manage doors, lockers and rooms. Doors work in exactly the same way as they always have done, and they represent a handle or a powered control unit. Lockers work slightly differently to doors, and they can be configured to be freely assigned to a user, so you can walk up to an empty one, swipe your card and allocate it to you, or they can be pre-assigned to a named individual. Rooms is used in a hotel environment, and they differ slightly to doors, though fundamentally they are the same thing, but they can be easily assigned to a user on a temporary basis. Zones are still groups of doors which typically have similar access rights, such as meeting rooms, comms rooms. Often people will treat zones as physical areas, but sometimes it pays to zone the doors logically. So you might have, say, staff doors, student doors, IT suite doors, things like that. We've then got locations. So locations are used to group large numbers of doors and zones together. For example, a company maybe with offices spread across the country might have a location configured for each of its buildings in different cities. And then functions is a feature which allows the grouping of doors across different locations. So for example, you might want to group all of the front doors or main entrances together at different sites in order to grant users who have got different base offices to all be able to get access to the front doors at different buildings. Other settings are the same as they always have been. So we've got outputs for controlling additional relays, for example with a timer or a lift. We've got lockdown for quickly securing areas, limited occupancy, which is useful in car parks and places like that, and then roll call for getting a list of users within an area. And finally, we can configure the scheduling of locks and outputs like we always have been able to do. Moving into the cardholders menu, these are split into three categories. So we've got users, visitors and guests. So users are the same as they've always been. They're your staff, your students or your tenants. We've got visitors, which are temporary users who only require access for a short time with predefined access rights, such as a contractor or maintenance personnel. And then we've got guests, and that relates to the hotel functionality. So each of those users can have predefined access levels, which dictates where they can go and during what times. We've still got the ability to define groups for limited occupancy and calendars for the card holders as well. We've got the keys menu, which is the same as it always has been, but this just enables the management of cards within the browser now rather than within the application. The monitoring menu brings a lot of the service components into the browser. So previously the communication with the service or real-time elements had to be performed via a separate application, including the very first release of Space. This is all now integrated into the browser to allow door control and monitoring, as well as querying the audit trail to see where people have been. We've got a menu for various hotel functionality, most of which is pretty self-explanatory. Things like one-shot keys are single-use cards which will get someone into a room once and then expire. So that might be useful, say, for a meeting room where you just want them to go in at their allocated time, and then that's it. They can't get access to any other doors after that. We've got the tools menu now, and this gives us access to some of the integration settings for importing and exporting data, as well as very basic card printing within the software. And then finally the system menu, which gives us access to the system auditor, which logs any changes that are made in the software. We've got the operators and operator groups, so we can define the access rights. We've got various other settings, including the PPD menu there for doing door programming and managing the Salto network. So with the new software, Salto has released new hardware too, which builds upon the existing equipment in the CU5000 range. So what's nice now is that a single control unit can now offer support for 2 completely independent doors, as well as providing 4 relay outputs instead of 2. We've also got more inputs now which are configurable, so we can have office mode switches connected to provide this facility without the need to hold the door and swipe a card. So in a classroom this might be really useful, where you could go into the teacher could go into the room, and then once they're in the room they could just press a switch and that would leave the door open behind them. We've also got coming up soon a PoE version of the control unit, which will enable you to power the CU4000 from a network and not require a separate power supply. This will only power the control unit and not any lock mechanisms, just because of the current draw. We can't pull that much current down a network cable. We've also got the wall readers pictured there. So these are now available in white and black instead of the standard grey. They offer a much slicker design, as well as the ability to be cabled up to 400 meters from the control unit instead of the previous 100 meters. They also support the Bluetooth low energy to allow smartphones to be used as keys instead of traditional cards. Additionally, Salto have introduced the concepts of gateways and nodes. A gateway behaves exactly the same as an existing network control unit. It's got a network port, it can control 2 doors. What you can do with nodes is expand those control units, those gateways. So I'll give you a quick example of how this architecture looks. So please excuse my crude diagram. Hopefully it explains a little bit better than words can. But here's our traditional setup. So we've got server connected to the network, and then we've got a control unit that's also connected to the network. What you can now do is, with the gateways, exactly the same. We can have 2 wall readers connected to a gateway, but we can then also piggyback nodes onto these to give additional doors from a single network connection. This is really useful where you've got a kind of high concentration of doors in an area. So say, for example, turnstiles. We could just provision 1 network connection, and then we could daisy chain the various nodes from a single gateway. And that would then enable us to have independent control of all these turnstiles just with a single network connection. So it's saving cost in getting them installed. The offline equipment has also had a refresh, and the XS4 mini handles are now available. These units are much more compact, and they simplify the installation because they only require a standard handle on the inside of the door, and everything else is on the outside. So the batteries are held on the outside of the door, the unit requires a special tool to facilitate the removal of the cover to get to those. The programming is also simplified as well, because this unit uses NFC to communicate with the PPD, so rather than the cable needing to be plugged in. These handles can also work with the new Bluetooth technology that I mentioned earlier, and I'll be going into a little bit more detail about that too. So the Bluetooth technology is referred to as just-in, just basically allowing a user's phone to unlock doors. There is another version of this called mobile NFC, and what that enables you to do is use a phone to update a card. So you can basically use your phone as an update point to get new access rights onto a card. Unfortunately, it only works with Android devices because the NFC is restricted in iOS phones. The nice thing about just-in is that it works via Bluetooth, which is supported on both iOS and Android devices. So the user can present their phone against the handle so that it senses your presence, and then the door is unlocked using BLE. This functionality does require the latest compatible hardware to enable support, but speak to us if you're interested in getting more details about this, and we can have a chat with you about it. With our integration capabilities, mobile phone numbers can be pre-populated into the software to enable the use of a phone maybe as a temporary card solution in some environments. So Salto has changed the licensing model to give more options to the software rather than restricting the numbers of doors or users. So all the software is now based on the same database architecture. It's all SQL based, and it's all service driven, meaning it can just be installed once and then just left to run in the background. Exactly as before, license purchase is a one-off. They don't require a annual subscription or renewal. And there are now 6 core software editions, each adding more functionality over the last. So Basic offers the least functionality, but it's still a good starting point for a small organisation. One of the big things with Basic is that the management of cards will be quite a manual process, so there's no automatic card assignment. You would have to print a card for each user, look their record up, and then encode their card independently. Online is the next step up. That allows a little bit more automation, so that will do the issuing of cards automatically, and also gives you a lot more real-time control over your doors and the system. Identity adds visitor management and basic card printing functionality. It still won't encode cards. This is still a manual process, so although you can actually print an ID badge for someone using the data held in Salto, it is very restricted, and you would then still need to either manually capture the ROM code of the card or assign it to the user manually. And then partition is the top level, and what this does is this allows the system to be split into different areas which can be managed independently, but objects can still be shared between the different partitions in the system. There's then 2 other licenses. We've got demo and trial. Demo offers full functionality, but is quite restricted in the numbers of users and doors that you can configure in the system. We've then got trial, which is fully functional, no limits at all, but it will only run for 90 days. Trial is available. We do have to still order it, but it's available for no cost. Demo, there is a small charge for, and like I say, it is quite restricted in its capabilities. In addition to the 4 main software versions, there are extra modules available which can add further features or support additional requirements. So many of these features are enhanced versions of what was offered in previous software. Some are new developments though. So one of the big things that AIT will always supply with any software version is the database sync, because this is the core building block for providing system automation and integration, and it's the way that we get data into the Salto system from other sources. Any of the other components, such as graphical mapping, you might want to have a large screen in an office that shows a floor plan with various doors. That's now available as an add-on. One of the other things that always used to be included is wireless, but that's now an add-on module. So if you purchase any wireless hardware, you would need to have the wireless software license for that as well. They're not particularly expensive options. The majority of them. Some of the things like custom encryption keys, that is quite an expensive option. But again, if any of these are interesting to you, then give us a call and we can have a chat about those. So here's just a quick grid showing all the functionality available. As you can see, there are quite a lot of options. We're happy to guide you through making the best choice to fit your needs and your organisation. But I just thought it would be useful to show you all the various options. I've talked about a lot of things, and this is what's included in the various software versions. So I'm now going to pull up a live copy of the software running on my laptop so you can just see how it looks. So this is running in Internet Explorer. This is the login screen that we've got here, so I'm just going to log in with no password for now. And we've got our grid in the middle here for managing our various bits and pieces. So what I'll do is I'm going to create an access level here. We'll call it webinar access level. I'll give it a quick ID. And then what I can do from here is I can choose the elements that belong to this this access level. So say for example we can add our test door. I could then add a zone, so I'll add the webinar zone into the webinar access level. I can choose which users belong to this access level here as well, so I'll put myself in here and then save that. And it's actually I was a bit skeptical about moving from a thick client application to being web-based, but actually it is really snappy, and although this is just running on my laptop, it's perfectly usable when you get it onto a much quicker server with a much more oomph behind it for managing the database. Then it does fly along quite nicely. I'll just show you the users list here for card holders. So again, all the screens look the same. They've got very similar functionality. We've got some filtering here, so this replaces the old search functionality, and it's all based around wildcards. So I can just type an E and it will just pull up people's names that contain an E in it. Jump into my user record. And we can see I've got all my personal details up here. Got the buttons for assigning keys and bits and pieces. We've got the mobile phone data here, so if we were using the just-in order to unlock doors, I'd put the phone number in, and it would then send a text message asking the user to activate their software and verify who they are. And then again, just down the right-hand side here, we've got all the various options that we can configure for this user. If I click on the admin menu up here, I've got my settings. I can change my password if I like, and then I've got all the settings for the encoder and bits and pieces. What we're now sort of tending to go towards is supplying networked encoders. purely because they can be shared by multiple users who have got the web-based software. So rather than sharing a USB device, you can just have one network device, and then it can be used by multiple people. So yeah, just really just to sort of give you a very quick overview of the software. It's quite intuitive. If you're already familiar with the software, it's actually, once you get your head around the new terminologies and just finding out where various options are, it's actually really quite nice to navigate. I do quite like it, I must admit. So that's all from me. Obviously, because this is a recorded version, we're not going to have any questions. Just a couple of things that we have been asked about away from webinars. So about upgrading space from previous software versions. So yes, that is possible. There's no charge for the new software. There might just be a small cost for any additional modules to get the same functionality as you've got in your current version, and then just a charge for the time in actually dealing with the upgrade. But other than that, the software you've already paid for, so you're entitled to upgrade to space. We've also been asked in the past about upgrading old handles to support the just-in Bluetooth technology. Unfortunately, that's not possible, as the handles require replacing, because the components for Bluetooth communication, they're all built in, and it's not just kind of an add-on aerial or anything like that we need to put in. We've also had a panicked phone call in the past about whether the old CU5000 hardware and original lock sets are still available. Yes, they are. No problem supplying those to match any existing hardware that you've got. So thank you very much if you've sat through this recording. I do apologise for the problems with screen sharing on the actual date of the webinar. If you've got any other questions though, and you want to just drop us an email or get in touch with us, then the details are on the screen now. But if you're watching this on Friday, then I hope you have a great long weekend. And if you're watching it after the bank holiday, then I hope you had a nice long weekend. Thanks very much. My name's Mark Phelan, but if you've got any questions, just get in touch with us, and we'll do our best to answer it. Thank you very much.